Hello and welcome to the Sleepy Computer Scientist. I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're settling into bed with the lights dimmed low, your pillow cradling your thoughts, or resting on the couch as the day finally releases its hold on you, this space is for you. Tonight, we drift into one of the deepest mysteries in all of computing, not a puzzle with missing pieces, but a question about whether some puzzles can ever be solved quickly at all. It's called P versus NP, and it whispers something profound about the limits of what computers and perhaps minds can truly know. This isn't just mathematics, it's philosophy folded into algorithms. It's about the shape of difficulty, the weight of verification, and how some questions might be designed by the universe itself to remain just beyond our grasp. Now, I should gently warn you, this tale may soothe you so well you won't hear the end. But if it keeps your mind glowing a bit too long, I promise that even wakefulness can be restful when filled with wonder. If you find peace in this moment, I'd be grateful if you gave this video a quiet like, and maybe subscribe for more dreamy explorations of computation. And if you're comfortable, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Your words create a constellation of rest across the world. As always, this story is for relaxation and gentle education only. It is not a substitute for professional advice, just a safe harbor to fall asleep with curiosity. Now let's begin. Your mind feels active tonight. Questions circling, thoughts branching, problems waiting to be solved. But what if I told you that some problems, no matter how long you think, no matter how powerful the computer, might never yield quick answers? Not because we haven't been clever enough, not because the right algorithm hasn't been discovered yet, but because the universe itself might have woven certain questions in a way that makes them fundamentally, eternally difficult. This matters more than you might think. Every password protecting your secrets relies on this mystery. Every encrypted message, every secure transaction, every digital lock on every door assumes that some problems are hard to solve but easy to check. If that assumption is wrong, if P equals NP, then the digital world as we know it would need to be rebuilt from the ground up. But if it's right, if some problems are truly provably hard, then we live in a universe with beautiful, unbreakable boundaries. The emotional stakes here run deep. We want to believe that our efforts matter, that hard work pays off, that some things remain sacred and secure. But we also want to believe that every problem has a solution waiting to be found, that human ingenuity can overcome any obstacle. P versus NP sits at the intersection of these desires. It asks whether the universe is generous with its secrets or guards them jealously, whether creativity can be automated or remains forever human, whether difficulty is an illusion or a fundamental feature of reality itself. Tonight, we'll explore what that means, not with formulas, but with feeling, with the quiet wonder of problems that might forever resist our solutions. Let your thoughts drift now to a garden, a vast quiet garden where every path leads somewhere knowable. Every question has an answer you can find, not instantly perhaps, but steadily. One step, then another, until you arrive. This is the world of P, the class of problems that computers can solve in what we call polynomial time. Don't worry about the name, just feel what it means. Solvable, tractable, manageable. The garden stretches as far as you can see, trees organized in neat rows, flowers blooming in patterns you can predict, pathways that wind but never truly get lost. There is order here, there is structure, and most importantly, there is hope, because in this garden, every problem you encounter has a path to its solution. Imagine you're looking for a book in a library, not just any library, but a perfect one. Every book sorted alphabetically, every shelf labeled clearly, every section mapped with precision. You need to find a specific title. Let's say it's The Art of Algorithms by someone whose last name starts with K. You don't need to check every book. You don't even need to check every shelf. You walk to the K section, perhaps 10,000 books total in this library, but you're already standing in front of just a few hundred. You start in the middle of the K section. Kernighan. The spine reads, too far. You move left. Johnson. Too early. You move right again, splitting the difference. Knuth. Close, very close. A few more checks, a few more splits, and there it is, The Art of Algorithms. How many books did you check? Maybe 20, maybe 30, out of 10,000. This is called binary search, and it's one of the most elegant problems in P. The time it takes doesn't grow linearly with the size of the library. It grows logarithmically, slowly, gently, manageably. 1,000,000 books, only 20 checks or so. 1,000,000,000 books, about 30 checks. The key is the sorting. Someone at some point put in the work to arrange these books, and once that work is done, once the structure exists, finding becomes easy. Not effortless, but achievable, reasonable, human. You can feel this in your own life, can't you? When your thoughts are organized, when your day has structure, when your tasks are sorted by priority, everything becomes more manageable. The chaos resolves into clarity. The overwhelming becomes approachable. That's what the Garden of P offers, structure that makes complexity comprehensible. Now imagine a different problem. You have a deck of cards, completely shuffled, chaotic. No two adjacent cards in the right order. Your task? Arrange them from ace to king, in all 4 suits. This too lives in the Garden of P. Not because it's trivial, it might take time, but because there are clear strategies that work efficiently. You might compare pairs of cards, swapping them if they're out of order, bubbling the largest cards toward one end, like air rising through water. Bubble sort, they call it. Simple, gentle, not the fastest, but reliable. Or you might divide the deck in half, sort each half separately, then merge them together like 2 streams joining into a river. Merge sort. More sophisticated, more efficient. The time it takes grows predictably, even as the deck grows larger. 52 cards take a few dozen comparisons. 1,000 cards, a few thousand comparisons. The relationship is clear, proportional, knowable. Watch the cards rearrange themselves in your mind. 2 of hearts moves past the 7 of clubs. Jack of diamonds settles beside the queen. Ace of spades finds its way to the beginning or the end, depending on your preference. There's a meditation in this, a rhythm, each comparison a small decision, each swap a tiny correction, and gradually, through patient iteration, order emerges from chaos. This is what computers do billions of times per second, sorting data, organizing information, finding structure in streams of numbers, words, images, sounds. Every search engine result, every social media feed, every recommendation algorithm, they all rest on this foundation of efficient sorting, and the beautiful thing, we know it works. We can prove mathematically that these algorithms will always complete in reasonable time. There's no hidden trap, no worst-case scenario that spirals into eternity. The path through the garden is guaranteed. Let your mind drift now to a different kind of problem. Imagine a map of cities connected by roads, dozens of cities, hundreds of roads. You stand in one city and want to reach another. What's the shortest path? This is Dijkstra's algorithm, named after the Dutch computer scientist Edgar Dijkstra, and it too lives in the Garden of P. It explores the roads systematically, keeping track of the shortest known distance to each city, updating as it discovers new paths. Picture it like ripples spreading across water. You drop a stone in the pond, that's your starting city. The ripples spread outward, reaching nearby cities first, then more distant ones. Each ripple carries information. I can reach you in this many miles. As the ripples overlap, as paths intersect, the algorithm keeps only the shortest distances. It never needs to explore every possible route. That would take far too long. Instead, it explores smartly, efficiently, guided by the structure of the problem itself, and eventually, the ripples reach your destination city. The algorithm stops. It has found the shortest path, and it hands it to you like a gift. Go this way, then that way, then there. 16 miles total. This happens every time you use a GPS, every time you check transit directions, every time a delivery truck plots its route. Billions of shortest path calculations every day, all solved in the Garden of P, all completed in time that scales reasonably with the size of the map. There's something comforting in knowing these problems are solved, that the paths exist and can be found, that complexity doesn't always mean impossibility. But as you stand in this garden, looking around at all these solved problems, all these efficient algorithms, you begin to notice something at the edges. The garden has borders. Beyond the neat pathways and organized shelves, beyond the sorted cards and mapped routes, there's something else. A wilderness, a place where the paths tangle and disappear, where problems grow wild and strange. And at the border between the garden and the wilderness, there's a gate, a question, a mystery that has never been answered. Does the wilderness belong to the garden? Or is it truly, fundamentally different? Let's step through that gate now. Let's enter the wilderness of hard problems. The air changes as you step beyond the garden gate. It's not colder exactly, but less certain. The paths here are different, tangled, branching in every direction. The questions multiply endlessly, and every answer seems to require checking countless possibilities, one by exhausting one. Welcome to NP, not non-polynomial. That's a common mistake people make. NP stands for non-deterministic polynomial time, but let's not worry about the technical name. Let's feel it instead. These are problems where finding an answer is hard, but checking an answer is easy. Picture yourself standing before a table. On it lies a jigsaw puzzle. Not a small one, a huge one. 10,000 pieces scattered randomly, none connected, each piece a tiny fragment of a larger image you can't quite see. Your task: assemble it. Where do you even begin? You might start with the edge pieces, searching through the pile for flat-sided pieces, slowly building the border. Then maybe you sort by color, all the blue pieces here for the sky, all the green pieces there for the grass, browns for the tree trunk. But even with sorting, even with strategy, you're still faced with an enormous search space. This piece might go here, or there, or over there. You try it, it doesn't fit. You try another, another. Hours pass, days perhaps, your back aches, your eyes strain. But piece by piece, section by section, the image emerges: a landscape, a cottage beside a lake, trees in autumn colors, a small boat moored at a dock. Finally, after exhaustive searching, after trying countless combinations, you place the last piece. The puzzle is complete. That was hard. That took time. Real time. Human time. But now imagine someone walks into the room. They've never seen this puzzle before. You ask them, is this correct? Is this assembled properly? They look at it. Edges all aligned. Colors blending smoothly. Every piece fitting perfectly with its neighbors. The image clear and complete. Yes, they say after just a few moments. This is correct. They didn't need to assemble it. They didn't need to try thousands of combinations. They just needed to verify, to check. And checking was fast, easy, obvious. This is the heart of NP. Solving is hard, verification is easy. The puzzle might have taken you days to assemble, but verifying it took minutes. That's the asymmetry that defines this wilderness, the gap between finding and checking, between discovery and confirmation. Let your mind drift to another image now. A safe, an old-fashioned combination safe with a dial. Not a simple 3-number lock. This one has a combination that's much longer. 50 numbers. Each number can be anything from 0 to 99. The safe contains something valuable. A secret, a treasure, a truth, and you need to open it. But you don't have the combination. How long would it take to crack it by trying every possibility? Let's think about this slowly. For each of the 50 positions, you have 100 choices. That means the total number of possible combinations is 100 multiplied by itself 50 times. That's 100 to the power of 50. How big is that number? It's a 1 followed by 100 zeros. It's more than the number of atoms in the observable universe. If you tried 1 billion combinations per second, far faster than any human could, it would take longer than the age of the cosmos to try them all. This is what we mean by exponential growth. The time needed doesn't just increase, it explodes, it becomes astronomical, impossible in any practical sense. But now imagine someone hands you a piece of paper. On it, written in neat handwriting, is a sequence of 50 numbers. This is the combination, they say. You turn the dial, right to 42, left to 7, right to 88, left to 33. On and on, following the sequence. 50 numbers, maybe 5 minutes to enter them all carefully. The final number clicks into place. The safe opens. That took 5 minutes. Checking the combination took 5 minutes, but finding it would have taken eternity. Again, solving is hard. Verification is easy. This asymmetry isn't just academic. It's the foundation of modern cryptography. Every password you use, every encrypted message, every digital signature, they all rely on this gap between solving and checking. When you log into a website, you type your password. The server checks it against what it has stored. That's fast, instant, easy. But someone trying to guess your password has to search through an enormous space of possibilities. If your password is long and random enough, that search takes longer than civilizations last. We build security on the assumption that some problems are asymmetric, that checking is fundamentally easier than solving, that the wilderness of NP is truly wild. But is it? Or have we just not found the right paths yet? Now imagine you're a merchant in an old kingdom. You have 50 cities you need to visit, one in each province. You need to visit each city exactly once, then return home. And you want to minimize the total distance traveled, because travel is expensive, time-consuming, dangerous. This is the famous traveling salesman problem, and it's one of the most studied problems in all of computer science. How do you find the shortest route? Well, you could try every possible route. Start at home, then visit the cities in different orders. Home to city A, to city B, to city C, home to city A, to city C, to city B, home to city B, to city A, to city C. How many possible routes are there? For 50 cities, it's approximately 50 factorial. 50 times 49 times 48 times 47, all the way down to 1. That number is roughly 3, followed by 64 zeros. Even if you could check a trillion roots per second, it would take longer than the universe has existed to try them all. This is the wilderness of NP in its full, tangled glory. A problem that seems simple to state, find the shortest route, but explodes into impossibility when you try to solve it. And yet, if someone hands you a specific route and claims it's the shortest, you can verify their claim relatively easily. You measure the distance, add it up, compare it to other routes you know. That's manageable. That's checkable. The traveling salesman problem has haunted computer scientists for decades. We found clever tricks to find good routes, not necessarily the optimal one, but close enough for practical purposes. We found ways to prune the search space, to avoid checking obviously bad routes, but we've never found a method that's guaranteed to find the optimal route in polynomial time. We've never found a path through this wilderness that doesn't occasionally force us to wander for exponential time. And here's what's truly mysterious. We don't know if such a path exists. Maybe there's a brilliant insight we're missing, a hidden structure in the problem that would let us solve it efficiently, a shortcut through the wilderness that we just haven't discovered. Or maybe not. Maybe this problem is truly hard. Maybe the universe itself has woven it in a way that resists efficient solution. That's the question that haunts computer science. That's the boundary between the garden and the wilderness. That's P versus NP. But before we confront that question directly, let's look at something even stranger. Let's look at what happens when problems in the wilderness start to connect to each other. As you wander deeper into the wilderness of NP, you begin to notice something odd. These problems, the jigsaw puzzle, the combination lock, the traveling salesman, they seem different on the surface. They're about different things, different scenarios, different goals, but there's a hidden connection between them, a secret thread that ties them all together. Some problems in NP are special. They're the hardest of the hard. We call them NP complete, and they have a remarkable property. If you can solve one of them efficiently, you can solve all of them efficiently. Imagine each problem in NP as a locked door. Behind each door is an answer, a solution, a truth. Some doors are easy to open. Those are in P, in the garden. But many doors are hard. They resist. They require searching through enormous spaces of possibilities. Now imagine that some of these hard doors are connected by secret passages. If you find a way to open one, you can use that same technique to open others. The locks, despite looking different, are fundamentally the same. This is what NP completeness means. These problems are equivalent in their difficulty. They can be transformed into each other, reduced to each other, mapped onto each other. The traveling salesman problem, it's NP complete. If you could solve it efficiently for all cases, you could also solve the jigsaw puzzle efficiently, and the combination lock, and thousands of other problems. The satisfiability problem, determining whether a logical formula can be made true, is NP complete. So is the graph coloring problem, coloring a map so no adjacent regions share the same color with a limited number of colors. So is the knapsack problem, packing items of different values and weights into a limited space to maximize value. Hundreds of problems, all connected by this hidden equivalence, all equally hard in a fundamental sense. Stephen Cook proved this in 1971, and it was one of the most important discoveries in computer science. He showed that there exists a class of maximally hard problems in NP, and that these problems are all equivalent to each other. Richard Karp followed a year later, showing that many practical problems, scheduling, routing, packing, planning, are all NP complete. That the hardness we encounter in real life isn't accidental or superficial, it's fundamental. This was both disappointing and illuminating. Disappointing because it meant that many important problems might never yield to efficient algorithms. Illuminating because it revealed deep structure in the landscape of difficulty. Let's explore one of these NP-complete problems more deeply. It's called SAT, short for Boolean satisfiability, and it's the original, the first problem ever proven to be NP-complete. Imagine you have a logical statement made up of variables that can be either true or false, and logical operators like and, or, and not. Something like either X is true or Y is true, and either Y is false or Z is true, and either X is false or Z is false. The question, can you assign values to X, Y, and Z such that the entire statement becomes true? Is there a satisfying assignment? For 3 variables, this is easy. You can try all 8 possibilities, true, 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 false, true, and so on, and check each one. But what if you have 100 variables? Now you have 2 to the power of 100 possible assignments, more than all the particles in the visible universe. What if you have 1,000 variables? The search space becomes incomprehensibly vast, and yet if someone gives you a specific assignment and claims it satisfies the formula, You can check their claim quickly. You substitute the values, evaluate the logical operators, see if the result is true. That takes time proportional to the length of the formula, not to the number of possible assignments. Once again, solving is hard, checking is easy. SAT appears everywhere in disguise. When you're planning a schedule and trying to satisfy various constraints, this meeting must be before that one. These two people can't meet at the same time. This room is only available in the morning. You're solving a version of SAT. When a computer chip is being designed and engineers need to verify that its circuits will work correctly under all conditions, they're solving SAT. When AI systems try to plan sequences of actions to achieve goals, they often encode the problem as SAT. It's fundamental, universal, unavoidable. And we don't know if it's truly hard or if we're just missing something. Here's why the NP-complete problems matter so much. They represent a single point of failure or success for the entire class of NP problems. If you could find an efficient algorithm for any NP-complete problem, if you could solve SAT quickly, or the traveling salesman problem quickly, or graph coloring quickly, then you could solve all of them quickly. Every problem in NP would suddenly become tractable. That's because of the reductions, the transformations between problems. They allow us to translate one problem into another while preserving its difficulty, so a fast solution to one hard problem would cascade into fast solutions for all hard problems. It's like finding a master key that opens every lock in the wilderness. One key, infinite doors. But despite decades of searching, despite thousands of brilliant minds working on these problems, despite computers growing exponentially more powerful, we've never found that master key, which suggests, though doesn't prove, that it doesn't exist, that the wilderness is truly wild, that P does not equal NP. And yet, we can't be certain, because proving something doesn't exist is often harder than finding it. You can search for a needle in a haystack by checking each piece of hay, but how do you prove there's no needle without checking every piece? That's the trap, the beautiful, frustrating trap of this problem. Let's confront it directly now. Let's ask the question that has no answer. And so we arrive at the heart of the mystery. The question that has haunted computer science for half a century. The question worth $1 million to whoever solves it. Part of the Clay Mathematics Institute's Millennium Prize problems. The question that might never be answered at all. Does P equal NP? In simple terms, are the problems we can verify quickly the same as the problems we can solve quickly? Is the wilderness secretly a garden with hidden paths we haven't discovered? Or are they truly fundamentally different? Imagine for a moment that P does equal NP, that somewhere hidden in the tangled logic of algorithms and complexity, there exists an efficient solution to every NP problem. We just haven't found it yet. What would this world look like? First, cryptography would collapse. Every encryption scheme we use today relies on the assumption that certain problems, factoring large numbers, solving discrete logarithms, finding solutions to lattice problems, are hard to solve but easy to verify. If P equals NP, these problems become tractable. Every encrypted message could be decoded. Every password could be cracked. Every digital signature could be forged. The entire infrastructure of internet security would need to be rebuilt from scratch. Banks, governments, corporations, individuals, everyone would need new ways to keep secrets. But the implications go far beyond security. If P equals NP, then every problem with a verifiable solution would have a findable solution. Mathematics itself would transform. Any theorem that can be verified by checking a proof could also be discovered by algorithm. You could feed a computer a conjecture, I think this statement is true, and it would search through proof space efficiently, finding a proof if one exists. Human mathematicians wouldn't become obsolete, but the nature of mathematical research would shift dramatically. Instead of struggling for years or decades to prove a theorem, we could automate much of the search for proofs. Optimization would become trivial. Every scheduling problem, every resource allocation problem, every logistical challenge that involves finding the best solution among countless possibilities, all of it would yield to efficient computation. Drug discovery would accelerate exponentially. Finding molecules that bind to disease targets, predicting protein folding, simulating biological systems, these tasks involve searching through astronomical spaces of possibilities. If P equals NP, those searches become manageable. Artificial intelligence would leap forward. Many AI tasks involve searching through spaces of possible actions, states, or configurations. If those searches could be done efficiently, AI systems would become dramatically more capable. In short, if P equals NP, we would live in a world where computation is unreasonably effective, where every search problem is tractable, where creativity itself, the act of finding solutions, could be largely automated. It would be astonishing, revolutionary, almost magical, and most computer scientists don't believe it. The prevailing belief, the intuition that most experts share, is that P does not equal NP, that the wilderness is truly wild, that some problems are inherently fundamentally harder than others, not because of our limitations or lack of cleverness, but because of the structure of mathematics itself. If P does not equal NP, then there are problems that will forever resist efficient solution. Problems where the only path to the answer is to search through exponentially large spaces, checking possibilities one by exhausting one, where no clever shortcut exists, where the universe itself says, no, this far and no further. This would mean that difficulty is real, that some questions are hard not because we haven't been smart enough yet, but because they are woven from the fabric of mathematics to resist quick answers. It would mean that security is possible, that we can build systems where checking credentials is fast, but forging them is impossibly slow, where the asymmetry between verification and discovery provides a foundation for trust in digital systems. It would mean that creativity has a role that cannot be fully automated, that searching for solutions, for proofs, for insights requires something beyond systematic computation, intuition, insight, luck, human brilliance. If P does not equal NP, then the universe has structure, boundaries, limits that cannot be breached through raw computational power alone. There are walls we cannot climb, no matter how powerful our machines become. This is beautiful in its own way. It suggests that not everything should be easy, that difficulty has value, that some achievements require struggle, time, patience. It would mean that the map of computational complexity is genuinely diverse, not a flat plain, but a landscape with foothills, mountains, cliffs, and uncrossable chasms. But here's the profound difficulty. Proving that P does not equal NP might be extraordinarily hard. It's not enough to say we've looked for efficient algorithms and haven't found them. That's evidence, but not proof. You need to show that no algorithm could possibly exist, no matter how clever. You need to prove a universal negative. There is no efficient way to solve this problem. And proving universal negatives is one of the hardest things in mathematics. So we're left with a meta question. A question about the question itself. Is P versus NP even provable? Some mathematicians worry that this question might be independent of our axioms. That is, it might be a statement that can neither be proved true nor proved false within the formal system of mathematics we use. This has happened before. Kurt Gödel showed in 1931 that any sufficiently powerful mathematical system contains true statements that cannot be proved within that system. There are truths beyond the reach of proof. Could P versus NP be one of those statements? Could it be that the answer exists, either P equals NP or it doesn't, but we can never prove which one is true? That would be the ultimate irony. A question about whether certain problems are inherently unsolvable might itself be unsolvable, but most mathematicians remain optimistic. They believe P versus NP can be resolved one way or another. It's just a matter of finding the right approach, the right insight, the right perspective. The question remains open, the mystery endures, and perhaps that's where we are meant to be right now. Standing at the edge of the wilderness, looking into its depths, not knowing whether the paths we seek exist or not. You might be wondering why any of this matters for you, lying here in the soft darkness, far from theorems and proofs and million-dollar prizes. But this question touches everything. It touches your life in ways you might not realize. Every time you log into an account, every time you make a purchase online, every time you send a message you want to keep private, you're trusting in the hardness of certain computational problems. Your password isn't stored on the server in plain text. Instead, it's hash transformed through a mathematical function that's easy to compute in one direction, but extremely hard to reverse. When you type your password, the server hashes what you typed and compares it to the stored hash. If they match, you're in. But someone trying to break into your account doesn't have your password. They have the hash, and reversing that hash, finding a password that produces it, is a hard problem. Hard enough, we hope, that it's not worth the attacker's time and resources. This security rests on the assumption that P does not equal NP, that checking is easier than finding, that verification is easier than discovery. If that assumption is wrong, if P equals NP, then the entire foundation of digital security crumbles. Not might crumble, will crumble, definitively and immediately. But for now, you can rest easy, because even though we can't prove it, the evidence strongly suggests that your passwords, your messages, your transactions are safe. The wilderness protects them. There's something deeper here, though, something almost spiritual. The question of P versus NP asks, are there limits to what can be known quickly? Are there truths that can only be found through patience, through exhaustive searching, through time? In a way, it mirrors your own life. Some answers come quickly, easy problems you solve without thinking, decisions that feel obvious, paths that open clearly before you. But others resist. They require you to try and fail, to search and wonder, to sit with uncertainty until finally understanding arrives, or doesn't arrive. Some problems never fully resolve. You've felt this, haven't you? Questions you've wrestled with for years, decisions that seem impossible to make with confidence, situations where every option feels both right and wrong. Maybe the universe is telling us something through this mathematical mystery, that not everything should be easy, that difficulty has value, that some questions are meant to take time, that patience isn't just a virtue, it's a fundamental feature of existence. If P equals NP, then in principle every solvable problem is quickly solvable. But that's not the world we live in, is it? In our actual lives, many problems resist quick solutions. We search, we struggle, we try different approaches, and slowly, if we're lucky, answers emerge. Maybe mathematics is reflecting something true about the human experience. That finding is harder than checking. That discovery is harder than verification. That creating is harder than evaluating. When you're trying to write something, a story, an email, a message to someone you care about, it can take hours to find the right words. But when you read what you've written, you know instantly whether it works or doesn't. Checking is fast. Creating takes time. When you're trying to solve a problem at work or in your personal life, you might consider many possibilities, try different approaches, backtrack when things don't work out. But when someone else suggests a solution, you can often evaluate it quickly. Is this a good idea? Will this work? The checking is easier than the finding. That asymmetry is everywhere, and P versus NP asks whether that asymmetry is fundamental to the universe or just a feature of how we happen to approach problems. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's even beautiful that we don't know the answer yet. Because an unsolved problem is an invitation. It's a space where imagination can roam freely, where different perspectives can be explored, where the answer hasn't yet collapsed into a single definitive truth. P versus NP has inspired countless researchers, generated new fields of study, led to unexpected discoveries in seemingly unrelated areas. The search for the answer has been fruitful, even though the answer itself remains elusive. And in your own life, the unsolved questions, the mysteries you carry, the uncertainties you hold, they too have value. They keep you curious, they keep you searching. They remind you that not everything is finished, that there's still room for growth and discovery. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let this mystery rest gently in your mind. You don't need to solve it, neither does anyone else. Not tonight, perhaps not ever. Versus NP is a question that may outlive us all. It sits at the boundary of what mathematics can prove, what computers can compute, what minds can know. Let's drift back through time now. Let your mind float backward, past today, past this year, past decades, to see how this question came to be. Because every great mystery has a story, and this one is no different. In the beginning, before computers filled our pockets and powered our world, there was a question: what can be computed? Alan Turing in 1936, sitting in Cambridge, imagined a machine, not a physical machine, a theoretical one. A simple device that could read symbols on an infinite tape, write new symbols, move left or right, and change its internal state according to rules. This imaginary machine, now called a Turing machine, was enough to define computation itself. Anything that could be computed by following a procedure, by following rules, could be computed by a Turing machine. Turing was trying to answer a question posed by David Hilbert. Is there a mechanical procedure to determine whether any mathematical statement is true or false? Turing's answer was profound. No, some things are uncomputable. Some questions have no algorithmic answer. This was the first hint that computation has limits, that not every problem yields to mechanical procedure. But Turing's work was about computability. What can be computed at all, even if it takes infinite time? He wasn't asking about efficiency. He wasn't asking how long things take. That question would come later, after physical computers were built, after people started running actual algorithms and noticing that some finished quickly while others seemed to run forever. In the 1960s, as computers became more common, researchers began to notice patterns. Some problems were fast, others were slow, and the slow ones shared certain characteristics. They seemed to involve searching through huge spaces of possibilities. Researchers began to formalize the notion of efficiency. They defined complexity classes based on how the running time of an algorithm grows as the input gets larger. If an algorithm's running time grows as a polynomial function of the input size, say proportional to n squared or n cubed, then it's considered efficient. The class P was born. problems solvable in polynomial time. Then came NP, problems where solutions can be verified in polynomial time, even if finding them seems to require exhaustive search. And the question naturally arose, are these the same? Does P equal NP? In 1971, Stephen Cook formalized this question and proved that certain problems in NP are complete. They're the hardest ones, and they're all equivalent in difficulty. Richard Karp in 1972 showed that 21 important practical problems are NP complete. Scheduling, routing, packing, planning, all equally hard. Suddenly, the difficulty that engineers and programmers encountered in real life wasn't just bad luck or lack of cleverness. It was fundamental. It was mathematical. The question of P versus NP became one of the most important open problems in mathematics and computer science. In the year 2000, the Clay Mathematics Institute announced 7 Millennium Prize problems. Each would carry a reward of $1 million for the first person to solve it. These were the hardest, most important unsolved problems in mathematics. The Riemann hypothesis, the Poincare conjecture, the Yang-Mills gap problem, and yes, P versus NP. Of the 7 problems, only one has been solved so far. Grigori Perelman proved the Poincare conjecture in 2003, though he famously declined the prize money. The other 6 remain open, and among them, P versus NP stands out because it's not just pure mathematics, it has immediate practical implications. It touches technology, security, optimization, artificial intelligence. $1 million waits for whoever solves it, but more than money, there's glory, immortality in the annals of mathematics, a permanent place in the story of human understanding. And yet, despite this enormous incentive, despite thousands of attempts, the question remains unanswered. Some researchers have claimed proofs, only to have fatal errors found by reviewers. Some approaches seem promising, then hit insurmountable walls. The problem resists every assault. Perhaps that's appropriate. A question about fundamental difficulty should itself be difficult. Many brilliant minds have tried to answer this question. Let's walk through some of the approaches they've taken, the paths they've explored in search of an answer. One classic technique in mathematics is called diagonalization. It was used by George Cantor to prove that some infinities are larger than others, and by Gödel to prove his incompleteness theorems. The idea is elegant. You assume something exists, then construct a counterexample that contradicts your assumption. You show that no matter how you try to list or categorize things, there's always something left out. Many researchers have tried to use diagonalization to separate P from NP. The reasoning goes, assume you have an efficient algorithm for an NP-complete problem. Now construct a variant of that problem that your algorithm can't handle efficiently. Show that any algorithm fast enough for one instance must be too slow for another. But diagonalization hasn't worked for P versus NP. The problem is that such proofs would also rule out certain weak algorithms that we know can't solve NP-complete problems. The technique is too blunt, it proves too much, and therefore proves nothing. This failure tells us something. It suggests that the boundary between P and NP, if it exists, is subtle, delicate. It can't be captured by simple counting arguments or direct contradiction. The problem is slippery, it evades our grasp. Another approach looks at circuits, networks of logical gates that compute Boolean functions. And gates, or gates, not gates, all wired together to transform inputs into outputs. Every computation can be represented as a circuit, and the question becomes, how large must circuits be to compute certain functions? If you could prove that certain functions require exponentially large circuits, you'd be close to separating P from NP, because efficient algorithms correspond to polynomial-sized circuits, while hard problems require larger ones. Researchers have made progress here. They've identified specific functions that require large circuits. They've developed techniques for proving lower bounds on circuit complexity, but the functions they've analyzed are carefully constructed, artificial. Natural NP-complete problems remain stubborn. The techniques that work for toy problems don't seem to extend to real ones. There's a barrier here too, called the natural proofs barrier, identified by Alexander Razborov and Stephen Rudich. They showed that many proof techniques are fundamentally limited. They can't separate P from NP without also breaking cryptographic assumptions we believe to be true. It's as if the problem has defenses, as if it actively resists being solved by conventional methods. Some researchers have tried to translate the problem into algebra, to represent computational problems as systems of polynomial equations and use algebraic geometry to understand their structure. This approach has led to beautiful mathematics, new insights into the geometry of computation, connections between seemingly disparate fields. But again, the ultimate question remains unanswered. The algebraic formulation reveals structure, but not necessarily the structure we need to resolve P versus NP. There have been other approaches too. Topological methods, logical frameworks, information-theoretic arguments, probabilistic techniques. Each one illuminates some aspect of the problem. Each one advances our understanding incrementally, but none has cracked the central mystery. And maybe that's telling us something. Maybe the problem isn't just hard. Maybe it's asking us to develop entirely new mathematical tools, new ways of thinking about computation, complexity, and difficulty. Maybe the answer won't come from refining existing techniques, but from a conceptual breakthrough we haven't imagined yet. Or maybe the problem is showing us the limits of our current mathematical framework, hinting that some questions require us to expand our foundations before we can answer them. While mathematicians wrestle with the theoretical question, the practical world continues. And in practice, people have found ways to live with NP-hard problems, to coexist with difficulty, to find solutions that are good enough even if not optimal. If you can't find the best solution efficiently, maybe you can find a pretty good solution. This is the idea behind approximation algorithms. For the traveling salesman problem, we may never find the absolute shortest route through all cities, but we can find a route that's guaranteed to be no more than, say, 50% longer than the optimal route, or 20% longer, or even closer. These approximation algorithms are remarkable. They give up on perfection but deliver guaranteed quality in polynomial time. They say, I can't promise you the best answer, but I can promise you an answer that's provably close to the best, and I can give it to you quickly. This is how delivery companies route their trucks, how airlines schedule their flights, how manufacturers plan their production lines. They're not finding optimal solutions that would take too long. They're finding good solutions, solutions that work well enough, solutions that can be computed before the world changes and makes the problem obsolete. There's a lesson here about life, isn't there? You don't always need the perfect answer. Sometimes a good enough answer that arrives in time is better than a perfect answer that arrives too late. Sometimes the best is the enemy of the good. Another practical approach, heuristics, rules of thumb, strategies that often work well even if they're not guaranteed to be optimal. Simulated annealing, for example, mimics the physical process of cooling metal. It explores solutions randomly, occasionally accepting worse solutions to escape local optima, gradually cooling down to settle on a good solution. Genetic algorithms mimic evolution. They maintain a population of solutions, combine good solutions to create new ones, introduce random mutations, and select the fittest survivors over many generations. These techniques don't come with guarantees. They might find excellent solutions, or they might get stuck in suboptimal regions of the search space, but in practice, they often work remarkably well. They're how chess programs evaluate positions, how neural networks optimize their weights, how engineers design antennas and circuits and structures. They embrace the wilderness of NP. They don't try to tame it completely. They learn to navigate it, to find paths through the tangle without mapping every branch. And maybe that's wisdom, accepting that you can't know everything, can't solve everything perfectly, but can still make progress, can still find your way. There's another strategy, recognizing when a problem has special structure that makes it easier. The traveling salesman problem is NP-complete in general, but if your cities lie on a straight line, the optimal route is obvious. Just visit them in order. If they form a simple geometric pattern, efficient algorithms exist. Many NP-complete problems become tractable when restricted to special cases. Satisfiability with only 2 variables per clause can be solved efficiently. Graph coloring is easy for trees. Scheduling is manageable when jobs have certain structures. So in practice, people identify the structure in their specific problems and exploit it. They don't solve the general case, they solve their case. Your life is full of special cases too. General advice doesn't always apply to your specific situation. The optimal path for someone else might not work for you. You have to recognize your own structure, your own constraints, your own goals, and find solutions that work for you, even if they wouldn't work for everyone. Let's go deeper now. Beyond algorithms and proofs, into the questions that P versus NP raises about the nature of reality, creativity, knowledge, and existence itself. If P equals NP, then creativity, the act of finding solutions, is not fundamentally different from verification, the act of checking solutions. It would mean that finding a proof is no harder than checking one, that composing a symphony is no harder than recognizing whether notes are harmonious, that writing a novel is no harder than reading one and judging its quality. This seems wrong, doesn't it? Creating feels different from evaluating. Discovery feels different from verification. When you're trying to solve a problem, you're searching through a space of possibilities, most of which don't work. You try things, you fail, you try again. Slowly, through trial and error, through intuition and insight, you find what works. But when someone shows you a solution, you can often immediately tell if it's right. The creative struggle is bypassed. The checking is straightforward. If P equals NP, this distinction would be illusory. It would suggest that creativity is just search made efficient, that the right algorithm could systematically find masterpieces as easily as it recognizes them. But most people's intuition rebels against this. We feel that creation is special, that it requires something beyond systematic procedure, inspiration, imagination, that ineffable spark. Maybe P versus NP is asking, is creativity algorithmic? Or is there something in human minds that transcends computation? There's another angle here. We've been assuming that verification is easy, that checking solutions is straightforward. But is it really? When you check a mathematical proof, you verify that each step follows logically from previous steps. But how do you know your verification is correct? Are you sure you haven't missed a subtle error? When you check a password, you compare it to a stored hash. But how do you know the hash function wasn't designed with a backdoor? How do you know the verification process itself is trustworthy? Verification requires trust. Trust in the checking procedure. Trust in your own judgment. Trust in the foundations. And sometimes verification is harder than it seems. Some mathematical proofs are so long and complex that even checking them thoroughly takes years of expert effort. The classification of finite simple groups, for example, spans thousands of pages and has been checked by many mathematicians, but questions about completeness remain. So maybe the boundary between solving and checking is blurrier than we think. Maybe verification has its own difficulties, its own complexities. Maybe P versus NP is highlighting something about the relationship between creation and criticism, between doing and judging, between action and evaluation. Here's a strange thought. What if P versus NP reflects something about the universe's attitude toward knowledge? If P equals NP, the universe is generous. It gives up its secrets relatively easily. Every well-posed question has an efficiently findable answer. If P does not equal NP, the universe is more reserved. It guards certain truths. It makes some things easy to check but hard to find. It preserves mystery. Which universe would you prefer to live in? A universe where everything is solvable might seem wonderful at first. No problem too hard, no question beyond reach. But it might also be boring, predictable, without genuine challenge or mystery. A universe with hard problems, with genuine difficulty, with boundaries on what can be efficiently known. That universe has depth. It has rooms we haven't explored. It has questions that resist our answers. It's a universe that rewards persistence, creativity, patience, that keeps us humble. That reminds us we don't know everything. Maybe that's the universe we live in. Maybe that's the universe we're meant to live in. We've wandered through the garden of P, into the wilderness of NP, confronted the question that has no answer. And now, as we near the end of our journey, let's think about what it means to live in a world where this question remains open. There's something peaceful about unsolved problems. They represent possibility. They're spaces where imagination can still roam. Once a question is answered definitively, it closes. The answer becomes a fact, a piece of knowledge to be learned and accepted. The mystery evaporates. But while a question remains open, it's alive. It invites exploration. It allows different people to approach it from different angles, to propose different ideas, to see different possibilities. P versus NP has been open for over 50 years. Generations of researchers have worked on it. Each generation brings new perspectives, new tools, new hopes, and in the meantime, the question itself has been fruitful. Trying to answer it has led to new branches of mathematics, new algorithmic techniques, new understanding of computation and complexity. Sometimes the journey is more valuable than the destination. In your own life, you carry unresolved questions too, big ones and small ones. Questions about purpose, relationships, decisions, meaning. You might wish for clear answers, for certainty, for resolution. But maybe the questions themselves are teaching you something. Maybe living with uncertainty is part of being human. Maybe you don't need all the answers right now. P versus NP teaches patience. It reminds us that some problems take time, that not every question yields quickly to attack. In our fast-paced world, where information is instant and answers are expected immediately, there's something countercultural about a question that has resisted 50 years of intense effort by brilliant minds. It says, slow down. Some things can't be rushed. Some understanding comes only after long contemplation. You feel this in your own life, don't you? The pressure to have everything figured out, to make quick decisions, to solve problems immediately. But some problems aren't meant to be solved quickly. Some require you to sit with them, to let them unfold gradually, to try different approaches over time. Maybe the lesson of P versus NP is that difficulty is okay, that struggling is okay, that not having the answer yet is okay. You're allowed to take your time, you're allowed to be uncertain, you're allowed to keep searching without having found. P versus NP marks a boundary between the easy and the hard, between the tractable and the intractable, between what we can know quickly and what might require exponential time. And there's something beautiful about boundaries. They give shape to things. They define what's on each side. They create contrast, difference, meaning. Without difficulty, would ease even mean anything? Without hard problems, would solving simple problems feel like accomplishments? The boundary between P and NP, whether it's real or illusory, gives structure to the landscape of computation. It tells us where we are. It shows us what we've conquered and what still lies beyond. And maybe that's enough. Maybe we don't need to know exactly where the boundary is. Maybe just knowing it exists or might exist is sufficient. Because boundaries aren't walls, they're not barriers to resent, they're edges to explore, frontiers to approach, horizons that call to us, and there's beauty in the calling, even if we never fully answer it. Our journey is nearly over. We've travelled from the garden of easy problems through the wilderness of hard ones. We've stood at the gate between them and asked whether they're truly different or secretly the same. And now it's time to come home, back to your body, back to your breath, back to this quiet moment where you rest. Let's think about sleep itself as a kind of computation. Your brain throughout the day has collected data, experiences, sensations, thoughts, feelings, all of it unsorted, unprocessed. When you sleep, your brain doesn't shut down, it works. It sorts memories, consolidates learning, processes emotions. It solves problems you didn't even know you were working on. How many times have you gone to bed with a question and woken up with an answer? How many times has the solution to a problem appeared in a dream or in that liminal space between sleep and waking? Your brain is running algorithms you don't consciously control, searching through spaces of possibility, connecting ideas that seemed unrelated, finding patterns in noise. Maybe sleep is your mind's way of handling NP-hard problems. During the day, you use heuristics, quick judgments, good enough solutions. But at night, your unconscious mind searches more thoroughly, explores more freely. Dreams are explorations of possibility space, scenarios that couldn't happen in waking life, connections that logic would dismiss, images that make no literal sense but somehow feel meaningful. Maybe sleep is where your mind practices being comfortable with uncertainty, with the wilderness, with paths that don't lead anywhere obvious. So as you drift now, let your mind do its work. Let it search, explore, wander. Let it grapple with the hard problems in its own time, in its own way. You don't need to solve anything consciously. Your mind knows how to process, how to sort, how to find what it needs. There's a concept in computer science called recursion. When a function calls itself, when a problem is solved by breaking it into smaller versions of the same problem. Rest is recursive too. You rest so you can work. You work so you can rest. Each sleep prepares you for the next day. Each day earns you the next sleep. And within sleep there are layers. Light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep. Each stage preparing for the next, cycling through the night, recursive patterns of rest within rest. Your thoughts are recursive too. Thoughts about thoughts, worries about worrying, questions about questioning. But at some point the recursion must bottom out. It must reach a base case, a foundation, a place where it simply rests without needing to go deeper. That place is here, now, this breath, this moment. You don't need to think about thinking. You don't need to solve the problem of how to rest. You just rest. The recursion stops. The search ends. You found what you were looking for, even if you didn't know you were looking for it. Peace, stillness, the gentle dissolution of effort into ease. In mathematics, a proof is a sequence of logical steps that leads from assumptions to conclusions, each step justified, each connection clear. But there's another kind of proof, the proof of experience, the proof of being. You don't need to prove you exist. You don't need to prove you're worthy of rest. You don't need to prove you deserve peace. These things are self-evident, axioms, starting points that require no justification. Tonight, let that be enough. Let your existence be its own proof. Let your breath be its own algorithm. Let your rest be its own solution. You've traveled far in this story, through gardens and wildernesses, through questions with answers and questions without them, through the limits of computation and the boundaries of knowledge, and you've arrived here, at this quiet moment, at this soft ending. Or is it an ending? Maybe it's just another step in an infinite recursion. Tomorrow you'll wake, new problems will arise, new questions will call to you, but for now, for tonight, the computation can pause, the search can rest, the algorithm can sleep. Closing. If you've made it this far, thank you for wandering with me. This story of P&MP, of gardens and wildernesses, of easy checking and hard finding, of questions that may never be answered, it was made for you. And if it brought you any comfort, if it helped you drift even a little closer to peace, I'd be so grateful if you gave this video a gentle like, maybe even subscribed for more quiet journeys through the world of computer science. And if you're still awake, tell me in the comments what part of the world you're listening from. I love seeing how these stories ripple across the globe, connecting us in our shared curiosity, our shared rest. But now, you don't have to think anymore. You don't have to solve anything. You don't have to understand. You've already done enough. Let yourself fall now. Let the questions rest. Let the boundaries blur. Let the garden and the wilderness merge into a single dreamscape, where everything is both easy and hard, both solvable and mysterious. Let P&NP become just sounds, just syllables, just gentle rhythms that carry you deeper into sleep. Your mind knows what to do. It knows how to rest, how to process, how to heal. Trust it. Trust the algorithm of sleep that has guided every human who ever lived. And know that when you wake, whether or not P equals NP, whether or not the universe holds its secrets tight or gives them freely, you'll still be here, still thinking, still wondering, still exploring the vast computational space of being alive. Rest now. The problems will keep. The questions will wait. The universe in its patient mathematics will hold everything in place until you're ready to return. Good night, sleepy computer scientist. Good night. The search is over. The proof is complete. The answer is rest. Sleep well.